All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit more about negative space, but something very specific, and that is margins. Now, we talked about, making rules in design and then learning how to break those rules. Well, a good rule is always use margins. So, 99% of the time, stick with good margins. All right, and then you can learn how to break those along the way. But basically, if you start off with using margins, you'll do yourself a favor. Your designs will look better, they will communicate better, and everybody will live a happier life with rainbows and puppy dogs. That's how margins work. All right, no, never. Never. There we go. Wow, I got a lot of things suddenly. Not sure how all that happened. All right, here we go. Margins. All right, so here is an example. All right, we've already seen this a little bit yesterday. Creating guides on your page. All right, creating margins. And basically, you want to always align your content within the margins that you create. So you can see here, this headline goes to the edges, top, left, right. The horizontal rule goes from margin to margin. The body text here goes from margin to margin. This is how you use margins, okay? This is what people commonly do, is they open up some form of text editor and they just basically start typing, okay? This right here allows no rest for the eye and the outside. It does not frame the content in a way that gives respect to the content. It's just all around bad, right? This is morally wrong. That's what I'm saying. All right, don't do this. No, I am saying no. This is not a business class. This is not e-marketing. All right, so the question, of course, is, well, how much margin do you need? How much is good margin? This is a good general percentage, all right? Now, what on earth does that mean, right? What is 10% margin? What is 15% margin? I'll show you. All right, so Illustrator, let's bring her up. Basically, you use what makes sense, what looks good, what is good for the eye, what creates a good frame around it, what gives rest to the eye, rather than jam-packing it full of stuff. All right, so create new. Yes?
See, since I'm a writer and I deal with new writers all the time,
Yeah?
the biggest issue that I see with people, aside from grammar, is formatting. They'll always do like huge blocks of text.
Yeah.
They won't separate
Yeah.
paragraphs.
Right.
They won't use margins. They won't use any of that.
Exactly. It makes reading hard, right? You as a designer have a ton of control over how enjoyable the read is and how much information is actually going to get passed to the reader. If you jam-pack a page full of text, you'll exhaust the reader, right? And they'll get partway through it and go, I'm not reading this. And this is, I'm sure, getting worse as we develop greater and greater dependence upon our mobile devices and people scan more and more instead of reading. You're gonna find this. So it's just good to get in a good practice of doing this. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my rulers, which is Control R on here. You don't have to do this. If you would like to follow along, that's great. This document came up with points as my measurement, which is tough because there's a lot of points across there. So I'm going to use inches just because it's more familiar. So I right-clicked on there to get my inches. All right, so a 10% margin. Well, what are we talking about here? If I took a, thank you, if I took a rectangle and I dragged it across here, I could choose to use my height or my width. I'll go ahead and fill that with some color. There we go. All right, so now I have this all the way across the page, and all I have to do is in the properties panel, and you see the rectangle here, it's got my XY coordinates. Those are the standard mathematical coordinates. But I've also got a height and a width. All right. The nice thing about Illustrator is if I want to find a 10% margin, I can type in here into my width slash, which means divide by 10. That's 10% of the width, right? Easy. I don't even have to do math, which makes me really happy. So if you take 8.5 inches wide, the inches will be 0.85 inches, right? You can do that math if you want to. It's just as fast to put in /10 and you're done. Okay, so for the height, just because it's easier to work with here, I'm going to go ahead and put in 0.85, make it the same. I'm just making myself a square. Because typically I work with the same margins, top, left, right, and just a little bit of extra on bottom. That I want to make those dimensions, the height and the width, exactly the same. All right, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and grab a vertical guide, drag it to that corner, and it'll snap to. There's my first margin. There's my second margin. Now I'll drag this down to the lower corner here, the opposite corner. I get that for my right margin, and now I want just a little bit of extra along the bottom. So I could snap it too, but you remember yesterday we talked about that little phenomenon. If you center things right smack dab in the middle, it'll feel like it's kind of falling off the page. So I want to give it just a little bit of extra, so I'll go ahead and make it 1 inch along the bottom, then I can get rid of this, and I have my margins. Those are 10% margins across there. Yes? How what? The width, I divided by 10. Yeah, sure, I'll show you. Okay, I'll go back. Here we go. Okay, so I made a rectangle that went from corner to corner, right? It's got to be that. Otherwise, you're starting off with the wrong thing. Okay, now I can select it. Up here in the width in properties, you can see it's 8.5 inches. If you changed it to inches, that's what it's going to say. If you left it as points, it's a bunch of points. It's like 615. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I just put my cursor in at the end of that, and I type in slash, which is next to the right shift button, and then 10, which means divide by 10. All right, that's how that math is done. And hit enter, and it'll do that. And then I make my height and width the same, so I can just copy and paste from my width up here to my height. Et voila. Then I lay in my guides here. Never hurts to repeat, unless it does. So there's my 10% margins. I'll go ahead and put something on there that says 10% margins. All right, so that's not quite an inch. If I were to, let's say, design my page such that my content goes from edge to edge, which it should in general, then what I'm going to have here is I lay in my placeholder text. My content wants to go from edge to edge. Okay? This is important. You want alignment to your content. All right? Align from edge to edge. This, not okay. That's bad. Okay? What's the point of putting margins in? Right? If you're not going to align stuff to your margins, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it. Okay? Now, there are reasons to pull stuff off of your guides. and that is when you use multiple column layouts, all right? Then stuff starts to get really interesting and kind of fun. But right now, we're not going to do that. All right, so I'm going to come down here, create myself another page. So, okay. So I want 8.5 inches by 11 inches. That's another letter size page, because I didn't want my guides to interfere with this page. All right, so if I want a 15% margin, I'm going to do the same process in that I create a rectangle here. Doesn't matter the color. Now, I don't know what to divide this by for a 15% margin. You don't divide by 15 to get 15%, so I would multiply times 0.15, right? Is that right? Okay, just confirming, because my math skills not so great. All right, there we go. There's a 15% margin. So what this is a 1.27 inches. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and paste that into my height, so that makes it easier for me to work with. I'll go ahead and throw guides in here. Bam, bam. Oops. I wanted a vertical guide right there. And a little bit of extra along the bottom. I'll go ahead and put that there. Okay, there's 15% margins. So if I type in here 15%, I'm going to line that up with my margin here, across the page. All right. There we go. Whoops, I missed it along the right edge. Want it to align. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my guides, and you can see the difference between the two of these things. There we go. Which do you feel is more attractive? How much? The 15% is more attractive? Okay. It's an opinion thing. There's no right or wrong answer. What do you think, Gavin?
I think the 15%. I don't know. Like the 10% looks like it's just way too much.
It feels too heavy, doesn't it? It feels like that. I don't want to read this page. Right? There's this like, oh, that's too much information on a page, right? That sort of occurs to me, but this feels lighter and airier. Now, this does mean you're not going to get as much text on the page, right? If you don't give yourself as much space to work with, but approachability is really important when you're designing a page. You want to make your page look inviting to come and look at that information, right? What do you think, Travis? 10% or 15? Which would you prefer? You like the 10%?
Well, I just think the 10%, but you've got to focus your eyes more onto it. Like part, it's all compact.
It feels more compact, the 10% does?
But then with the 15%, you're like, oh, okay, here's my breathing space, I guess, for your eye.
Yeah. So you're sensing that breathing space.
Yeah.
You can see it, right? It's like, ah.
If it was like a lower side, you'd be like, right little stuff on the side. Instead of that, you're like, half, I'm going to right around the corner of the page.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah. So you prefer the 15?
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Juan, how about you?
I would also prefer the 15. There's just more room around text.
Yeah. Got it. Amy?
Depends on what I'm reading.
Okay. All right. So depends on what you're reading. Can you explain that?
So if it's a novel that I'm reading for my own enjoyment,
Yeah.
the more the better, and I want a big old beefy book and
Yeah.
big old beefy pages
Yeah.
because I want it to last.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this psychology to it. You know, it really does depend on what the information is. If you're sitting down to enjoy a novel, and you anticipate good writing and engaging storyline, you might be able to get away with really tiny margins because it's like filling up your plate, right? It looks better, there's more meat there, right? Or whatever. But
If I open up a book that's, big, beefy looking book and it's got that 15% margins inside, I'm gonna be like, really?
I'm not getting as much bang for my buck. Yeah. Well, I can tell you there have been teachers throughout my student career who would use as little margin as possible on the page. And you'd hit that page and you'd go, oh my gosh, there's too much. I can't read. I'm already out of breath. Yeah, I want to be able to write in the margins, write my notes, or yes. Right. So this is, this seems like what was common. Okay, thank you. This seems like it was common for my instructors to do. It's not actually what they did because you can't print like this. Oops. I'm gonna do it. I'm going in. 0%. Oh yeah. Margins. I'm doing it just so you can see just how bad it really is. I'm hurting you. This is for your own good. This is medicine. Oh man, isn't that exhausting? I just don't even want to look at that. That's too much. I don't even want to. I don't care what's on that page. I don't want to read it. Just, yeah. I'm not reading it. Just not doing it. Can't make me.
I think I would look at it just to see if the words actually were contained on the page and get lopped off of it.
You're checking all of the words. Yeah. So, the choices become really clear when you compare them side by side, which feels nice and light and airy, which one you're giving the I rest to and framing. All right. So the ones that have margin feel respected, don't they? The content feels like it's respected content. I've set it up for you to read. It looks nice. You can do all kinds of wacky things with margins. Those two things that I just showed you there are common ways to do it. You could do, there's much more you can do. You could say, let's give myself a page here, give my letter-sized und. There we go. Okay, so let's say I wanted to use 10% margins. This time, I'm going to do 10% on the height and the width. All right, so I've got my rectangle here. I divide by 10 on the width. I divide by 10 on the height. Okay, that makes a little bit of a different animal right there. So I'll go ahead and lay my guides in to turn them on. Got an extra guide up there because of my previous work. And I'm going to make it a little bit taller. Okay. So actually, I want to keep that so I can see which one I'm on. There we go. Okay, so this is, do it this way. Stop that. 10%, 10%, margin by width and height. Fine. Okay. Get rid of that one. Point type. That works better for me. Okay, that has a different feel to it, doesn't it? It's just another way of doing it. It still frames it. It feels good. Feels a little tight on the edges to me. I would like to see a little bit more, but that's how you would go about it. All right. So any questions about that? This is a good rule. All right. So I'm going to go down here. So let us say, I'm going to go ahead and make a nice wide, I'll do 8.5 by 11 again. Just not to introduce confusion. Okay, so let's say I've got some, I'll do 15% margins here, times 0.5, times 0.15. Okay, I'll do it to the height is also. All right, so there we go. There's my rectangle properly placed. There we go. Phew, I did not want to stick there. And a little bit of extra height right there. That's good. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these other guides. My smart guides out of there. And it's in the view menu for, I don't know why, guides. I'm going to release them. There we go. Okay. So again, I want things to go from edge to edge. 15%. You'll notice that when I do this, I put my text on the left side, take it all the way to the right. Now, my text box is actually overrunning the right margin, but my content is not. That's the important thing, all right? So actually, I don't really like this, what's happening on the left. I really kind of want to see my text land on the margin. And you'll notice that I grab my content and drag it up to that top margin and let it touch there, but the box is over. Who cares about the box? The box is invisible, right? It's the visuals that's important, that you make sure to line up to your content, okay? Now with the smaller text, you want to, I wouldn't bother working with that little bit of, there might be just a tiny little bit of invisible space here between that and the margin. I wouldn't worry about that. I would just land the text box on the very edge and let it go to the right-hand side. All right. Now, images. Images work a little bit different, okay? Typically, you're going to see alignment happen within the margins. So I'm pretending this is an image, okay? I'm going to show you how to do a text wrap on this. So if you select that, the object has to be over the top of the text that it's working with, and it has to be on the same layer, okay? So you can see my layers here. It's within the same layer. Go up to Object, go down to Text Wrap, and then I've got options. I want to do options first. I like a 9-point offset around the thing. It feels better to me, and then I have to actually say go. All right, so two-step process. I set my text wrap options, and then I make.
If you don't set your options, will it still make it?
Yeah, it just will probably default to whatever was done last, would be my guess.
I was trying to set us that yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Just to see what it would look like for that text wrap on our
Okay. Uh-huh.
But I'm looking at twerk, and I was like, I don't know what that is. Or is it like an option?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It could have been it, but it probably not.
Yeah, what I was doing wrong.
Gotcha. My guess is if it wasn't working, you may have had it set on a different layer, or the object that you wanted to wrap wasn't above the text in the stacking order. So you can see my stacking order here, my rectangle is at the very top. Okay, if I dragged this down, let's say I dragged it down to the bottom, it doesn't work anymore.
I think I might have put it on a separate layer.
That's what would
Because I
cause
was
that problem.
tooling and I didn't want to move the text, and so I might have sent it on.
Yeah, that would be a reason why it wouldn't work. Yeah, but if it's at the top of a layer, that'll work. Now, if I had, for instance, if I had moved this up, oh, interesting. Curious to know. Illustrator's making me a liar. I've never seen that before. Okay, well, anyway, phew. How about those Mariners? Okay, so, all right, so when you put images into your layout, you also want to align them to one of the guides. All right, this is common, and it looks good. This, not so good. It feels haphazardly placed. This, again, this isn't terrible, but it's not very good. You either want to commit to landing it on the edges or doing something entirely different, okay? So commit to landing it on the edge. This is good alignment. But images can creep outside. If you landed it on the very edge of the page, this is commonly done, and it doesn't look terrible. If I did the same thing on the other side, usually it'll look fine. So images get a little bit of leeway. But what you don't want to do is this. Let's say, I've aligned it here. I don't want it creeping just outside. All right, so either commit to a big change or don't do a change. Does that make sense? Don't commit to tiny little changes when aligning your images.
Could you play with it a little bit, like if you were to move it all the way over to the side, and let's say you left that kind of false margin around your image?
Uh-huh.
You know how you have it offset from the text?
Yes.
If you did that same offset from the side of the page, does that then create a balance?
I wouldn't like it. I can tell I don't like that right there. Yeah, it
Well, and
it
stuff doesn't line up to it on the other side either, so it's, but if you moved it over to the other side, then you'd have that nice crisp line.
okay. So
But
this.
you left it there and then popped it over to create a false margin between it and the side of the page.
Yeah, I would say commit to a big change or none. I don't like this.
I'm not saying it's my favorite.
No,
I'm saying it's
yeah.
later.
You have to choose. This is one of those areas you got to kind of get to break the rules, right? But what I would suggest is when you're doing this, commit to a big change or none, right? But don't commit to the small changes. It'll look haphazard. It'll look like a mistake. All right. So here's another thing that's commonly done. Nothing wrong with that. That's your standard web page nowadays, right? All the way across. Plus, you have margins for your important content, right? So everything looks nice and clean and crisp. Looks good. All right. Now, here's another situation that we find all the time, and this will either distinguish you as a novice designer or something more impressive. Call out text, right? So let's say I'm going to give myself Anybody familiar with the term call-out text? You know what that is? Say it again, Emery.
I've heard of it, but I don't.
Yeah, okay. It's text that gets called out. It's text that gets called out. It's a special quote or some special information that you want to put in here. So let's say we've got this awesome thing that somebody says over here, and we want to put some call-out text into here, nice and big, or even, let's say we have some supporting little article here to our content. All right, this is the common thing that people do. Let's see, I'm going to have to, it wants to grab it right on the edge. Maybe I can do this. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it took my square away, darn it. They don't consider the margins important on a field of color. I don't know why. But the field of color behaves like another page, which you should use margins on, right? How much margins? 10%? 15%? What I would do is I would probably use my my mouse, I'm sorry, not my mouse, but my arrow keys and count. You know, if I count to the right, to a good spot, it feels right, then I would use that for my margin all the way around. So let's say I started here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, that feels pretty good right there on my left side. So I'll take it down now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then I'm just going to grab that corner and get real close. And take it down. Yeah, that feels more or less equal all the way around. That little red rectangle right there with a plus in it says that it's called overset text. That means there's more text in this box than it is showing. All right, and it's really important when it comes to printing something. You never want to see overset text when you have a final document, right? Because it says, there's some invisible stuff here, guys. I don't know. What do you want me to do with it? That's what's happening there. So there's your call out text. You give it margins, just like everything else. All right. Does that make sense? Okay. Treat a call out box or anything that has a background color to it as its own page. It gets margins all the time. Okay, so any questions about this? You're all going to use margins from now on, right? Yes, Mr. Richardson. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, so we'll go ahead and look at the assignment. There's 15 images in the containment field. Yes, yes. This is what I just showed you guys right there in the call-out text. Okay, so we're going to create a layout that looks kind of like a web page. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just grab my instruction set. Woo! Okay, go back to Illustrator, create a new document. I'm going to go ahead and make this a web document, and in the instructions it says 1,000 wide. This is pixels, 1,000 pixels, px, by 600 tall. And I want the orientation to be landscape, which is wide. 620, that's what I meant to say with my mouth. 620, but I always get that wrong. 1,000 by 620, thank you. Okay, there we go. Let's see, there's my size. I'm going to go ahead and paste my instructions into there. Woo! Oh, I see. Make them bigger so I can read them. Okay, so create an instruction. Yeah, 620. Thank you for that. All right. I'm going to start off with my rectangle. Did not hit the edge. My corner. Have to hit that corner exactly. If you get it off and you can't seem to get it right, all right, so I'm in the transform panel. If I set my point of origin to the upper left, I can see where I've actually put it, and I can set that to 0 and 0. That way, the rectangle is moved to exactly the 0 point. Now, this is not exactly your Cartesian grid that you used for math, because it starts in the upper left-hand corner rather than the lower left-hand corner, if that makes any sense. And then I know my width is 1,000 pixels wide, so I'm going to fix that. And 620 pixels tall, that's correct. All right. So I'm going to multiply, using the instructions here, multiply the height times 0.2. That gives me a 20% height. Okay. Now place the rectangle at the top of the page. This is the space my header graphic will go in. So this is not where I'm creating my margins yet. This is the space of my header graphic because I'm making a web page. Okay. All right. So now we're going to make a space for the navigation on the left by creating a colored rectangle over the entire page again. All right. I'm going to use a different color. I think that one is called non-offensive blue. That's the actual color name. Just kidding. Right. Ah, isn't that nice? So again, I'm going to make sure that my width and height are exactly correct. Now, I'm going to change the width to 20%, so I'm going to multiply times 0.2. Bam. Okay. I'm going to put this on the left edge of the page and send it to back. So if you forget what send to back is, Control Shift left brace. If you forget, it's up here under Arrange, send to back. Bam. There we go. All right. So that's my navigation spot for this page. It's not like HTML, is it? That's a lot easier in Illustrator. Okay, now we're going to create a rectangle that fits the page, fits the white space remaining on the page. Okay, so this is going to become our margins. So I'm going to go ahead and put a guide on the page right here, just to make it easier to make my rectangle. Go ahead and make my guide right there, so that my rectangle is easier to make. All right, so from here to here, there we go, and I'll set my fill to some color. I don't know if that's offensive green. Right. This is going to be my page space. This is where my content is going to go, so I want to give it basically margins, right? Okay, so I'm going to give it 10% margin. So here's my width. I'm going to go in here and multiply it, or actually I'll hit the divide by 10. My height, I'll go ahead and make that the same. I'll just make that an even 80 pixels. Set that to 80 pixels. There it is. Okay, put it next to the rectangle on the left. This is my margin spacer. I'm going to lay vertical guides right there and there. Now on a web page, you don't have to do that little trick of making things taller on the bottom because it's scrollable, right? It's not going to make a lot of sense. And plus, you don't know how big the user's browser window is. That's part of the problem with web design. You just don't know what space you've got to work with. All right, now we've created our margins here. Slide the spacer to the right. Da-da-da. Okay, we've just done that. Take a moment to bask in the glorious white space. All right. Choir of angels, Rising music. The lights are just right. All right, now we're going to create a text box in our white space, or in our text space here, with our margins properly made. Okay, set the text size to 12 point. Oh, that didn't work out so good for me. So I'm going to create another one. Once I set my text size correctly, it should stick. So, that's better. Okay. I'm going to set my leading to auto. Okay. So that's this one right here. So in my character panel here under properties, if I set it to auto, you'll see it in parentheses. All right, that's what it means, parentheses. So for 12-point text, it's going to have 14.4 point or pixel leading, which is the spacing between lines of text. Okay, and then you're done. That looks like nice, easy text to read. You've given it beautiful space. You've framed it nicely. Okay. Now, from here, you're going to hopefully grab. You guys did some writing, right? My story. You're going to put that text into that space. And if you didn't write it, put it in there. I did give that to you guys, right? Okay. Whew. Sometimes I forget. All right. Any questions about that process? That makes sense? Gavin?
I worked ahead on this project and I was looking for my story,
Yeah.
like the assignment.
Yes. It's with another assignment. Do you remember the My Story?
Yeah,
It's like last week, I think.
under, positive and negative.
Is it positive, negative space?
No, it's not. 'Cause you just did.
Alignment. Let's try. Oh,
It was balanced.
back it off here. Wasn't the reflection, was it? No. Asymmetry. Could that have been it? Nope.
Yeah, with their texture.
Rhythm and texture. So it's under the rhythm and texture exercise, Gavin. There's two practices. One is start to develop your branding story, because your story is what goes into creating the symbol that would be your brand, right? All right. Any other questions? All right. I'm going to sign off here.